वैकुंठस्य अमलात्मना यायु वैकुंठनीलयां सर्वलोक नमस्कृतम् स एकदा भगवतो वैकुंठस्य अमलात्मना ययु वैकुंठनीलयां सर्वलोक नमस्कृतम्. Word by word, synonyms. They, ekada, once upon a time, Bhagavataha, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vaikunthasya, of Lord Vishnu, Amala Atmanaha, being freed from all material contamination, Yayu entered. Vaikuntha Nilayam, the abode named Vaikuntha. Sarvaloka, by the residents of all the material planets. Namaskritam, worshipped. They, yeah, Namaskritam, worshipped. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Swami Prabhupada ki jai. After thus traveling over the universes, they also entered into the spiritual sky, for they were freed from all material contamination. In the spiritual sky, there are spiritual planets known as Vaikunthas, which are the residents of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and His pure, which are the residents of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and His pure devotees, and are worshipped by the residents of all the material planets. Again, I'm going to repeat. After thus traveling all over the universes, they also entered into the spiritual sky, for they were freed from all material contamination. In the spiritual sky, there are spiritual planets known as Vaikunthas, which are the residents of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and His pure devotees, and are worshipped by the residents of all the material planets. Purport. The material world is full of cares and anxieties. In any one of the planets, beginning from the highest down to the lowest, Patala, every living creature must be full of cares and anxieties, because in the material planets, one cannot live eternally. The living entities, however, are actually eternal. They want an eternal home, an eternal residence, but because of accepting a temporal abode in the material world, they are naturally full of anxiety. In the spiritual sky, the planets are called Vaikuntha, because the residents of these planets are free from all anxieties. For them, there is no question of birth, death, old age, and diseases, and therefore they are not anxious. On the other hand, the residents of the material planets are always afraid of birth, death, disease, and old age, and therefore they are full of anxieties. Om Agnanatimandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshurmitan Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manabhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swamrupa Kadahamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamanam Shri Guru Vaishnamam Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunathavitam Tam Sajivam Advaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Sri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Pada Sagana Lalita Shri Vishaka Vitamsya Hare Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Nupesh Gopikakanta Radhakanta Namastate Saptakanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhano Satyadevi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha Kalpatarubhayascha Kripa Sindhu Bhayevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. The words again. Ta ekada bhagavato vaikunthasya amala atmanaha yayu vaikuntha nilayam sarva loka namaskritam. After thus traveling all over the universes, they also entered into the spiritual sky, for they were freed from all material contamination. In the spiritual sky, there are spiritual planets known as Vaikunthas, which are the residents of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and His pure devotees, and are worshipped by the residents of all the material planets. So, this is a wonderful verse in this chapter description of the kingdom of God. We saw in the previous chapter, right, the untimely um, impregnation of Diti. And then we see in the first verse of this chapter, Diti was holding, because in the previous chapter, it was prophesied that these two sons, Kashyapa Muni had mentioned to Diti, that these two sons which you are carrying, because of that untimely nature of its impregnation, they will come out as demons, will create fear among the devatas, and ultimately will be slayed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu. Right. So, out of anxiety of that, okay, my sons will cause disturbance to the demigods, devatas, or at the same time, Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur mentioned, or worrying about that they will be slain by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Right? The mother is naturally protective for her sons. She did not even deliver them for 100 years. She held them for 100 years in her womb. And they were causing darkness to the womb of Diti. No, these two sons were so powerful and powerfully demoniac that they were causing darkness in the entire universe, which is illumined. Each universe is illumined by one sun. Right? It's illumined by one sun. Right? And that demonic nature was causing darkness and causing all kinds of inauspiciousness throughout the universe. So much so that the demigods started fearing of that something untimely is going to happen. Unfortunate things are going to happen. So they started praying to Lord Brahma. And Lord Brahma, seeing the situation, he narrates this particular pastime that one time my four sons, Manasi Putras, mental, sons who were born through mind, Manasi Putras, the four Kumaras, right, who were created to increase progeny, but ultimately had decided to remain celibates, right? They are the Kumaras, right? We see the Sanaka, Sanatana, Sanandana, and Sanat Kumara. From the childhood, they were performing austerities and wanted to remain as Rishi Putras and remain celibate. So they had no material desire, right? And then sometimes they will travel throughout the universes out of their own accord. Uh, and why will they travel? Not for sightseeing, but to preach devotional service. To preach devotional service, they will travel throughout the universes. So here we see that they then entered into the spiritual sky, and that's where the spiritual sky and the Vaikuntha planets. There's a description of the kingdom of God in this chapter, right? That why is it called Vaikuntha? It is called Vaikuntha because it is free of all anxieties. In the material world, the living entities, the eternal living entities, Nitya, Nityanam, Chitra, Chitranam, the living entities are eternal by nature. But because they want to enjoy separately from the Lord, they are put into this temporal nature, material nature, which is temporary in nature. It has a beginning and an end. The beginning is a uh, exhalation, right? Uh, and the end is inhalation. When the Lord Mahavishnu lying in the Karna Dakshai ocean, right, exhales, all these material universes comes into being, and when he inhales, all of them come back. Right? So because of that temporal nature, and because they're eternal beings, they are always looking for eternal pleasures, eternal home, right? But it's not possible in this material world. As a result, they are filled with anxieties. The purpose is cares and anxieties. Right? Caring, instead of reposing their consciousness toward the Supreme Lord, carrying on the temporal nature, right? Carrying on the temporal nature. And in this temporal nature, they go to these four miseries: Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadhi, birth, death, old age, disease. Right? While in the spiritual, beyond the material sky, right? Uh, no, these 4 or 5 gross elements are there. Bhumi apo nala vayu kamamana buddhi vacha, right? Uh, the sky, the material sky, what we see is a material sky, but beyond the material sky, there's a spiritual sky. And in that spiritual sky is a resident of the Supreme Lord, which is called Vaikuntha, which is free from all anxieties. And there is no birth, death, old age, and disease. There is no anxieties, no Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadhi. While all the 14 planetary systems, starting from Swarga Loka to Patala Loka, everyone is subjected to this birth, death, old age, and disease, and everyone is in anxiety in one form or the other form. We see the Devatas are in anxiety as soon as they see darkness throughout the universe and they see all the ill omens, they're in anxiety. Though the heavenly planets is filled with pleasure, but it's not eternal pleasure. They're in anxiety. We see Lord Indra, many passages in Srimad Bhagavatam where he's in anxiety. Right. Prithu Maharaj is performing the 100 Ashwamedha Yagya and he is filled with anxiety. Oh, that if he completes that 100th Yagya, no, means, he will be qualified to take a seat. And he is filled with anxiety. Filled with anxiety. So much so that he even somehow stops, tries to stop. Right? That's Swamedha Yagya. So, all the way from the heavenly planets to Pataloka, everybody is in anxiety. Because that's the material nature. Right? While in this particular passage where Lord Brahma is narrating, is the four Kumaras are entering into the spiritual sky, this resident of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Vaikuntha planet, right? Where the Lord resides with his pure devotees. And they are completely engaged. The pure devotees are completely engaged in the service of the Lord. Right? They are also caring, but caring for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And always thinking about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Right? There's lots of opulences in the spiritual world. Chintamani Prakara Sarma Sakalpa Bhikshu. Diamonds and corals are all lying. Here to get some diamonds and corals and this and that, first of all, we have to put in locker. Then we have to be in anxiety of, oh, there will be a theft. There, Kalpavriksha trees are there and these are lying on the street. Because there is no fear of the robbers coming. There is no unemployment. There is no inflation. Right. And all the material contamination which we see around us, the Vaikuntha planets, do not face that. Why? Because they are the residents of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They are illumined by just the presence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Natat bhasate suryo. In that spiritual world, there is no sun, no sasanka, no moon. Right? They are illumined by the light of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Himself. And His associates, the devotees of the Lord, are completely engaged in the service of the Lord, devotional service. So, while narrating this particular pastime of the four Kumaras, ultimately he is narrating that pastime of how the four Kumaras comes there and they're not well greeted by the doorkeepers of Vaikuntha, Jai and Vijay, and ultimately they curse them. And those powerful doorkeepers of the Vaikuntha planets, we see them take birth as Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakakshipu, who are right now residing within the womb of Diti, and Diti is holding them for 100 years. And they're so powerful that just by their presence, even in the womb of Diti, they're illuminating darkness throughout the whole universe. Like we see the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it illumines light. Krishna Suryasama Maya Andhikar. Yahan Krishna, wahan nahi Maya Adhikar. Wherever there is a Supreme Lord, there is light. While Maya, the illusory energy is compared to as darkness. Wherever there is Lord, there is no place for darkness. There is no place for darkness. Filled with light. While the demons, the saintly person also have we see a halo of light around them. Right? They have a halo of light around them. The demons have a lot of darkness around them. And more powerful you become, more darkness you prevail throughout. Right? More darkness you prevail throughout. Are there any questions or discussions?
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Dandvat. All praise to Srila Prabhupada. Prabhu, one question is actually two questions. The first one is Kumaras are impersonalists, and we learn that impersonalists can only go to Brahmajyoti. But over here, they go to the Vaikuntha, all the way to Lord Vishnu's abode. So, how is that possible?
Yeah, they're able to go all the way to the Vaikuntha's planet. They're not entering the Vaikuntha planet, but they go all the way to the Vaikuntha planet. They're able to enter the Vaikuntha planet after they smell the flower, when the impersonalism becomes, they become personalist. When they smell the flower offered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So they are powerful impersonalists, where they go all the way to the doors of the Vaikuntha planet.
So they have to cross the Brahmajyoti, correct?
Yeah, so they are beyond the Brahmajyoti is the Vaikuntha planets. So they are the doors of the Vaikuntha planets. And there they smell the flower offered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and they become personalist. And when they become personalist, they are so powerful devotionally itself that they can even curse parts, the associates of the Supreme Lord. to ultimately facilitate in the pastimes of the Supreme Lord.
Hmm.
Right? Ultimately, it's the pastime of the Supreme Lord that these doorkeepers are cursed so that they can take birth as demons and they can be that powerful that they can, ultimately, the Lord can wrestle with them, or no, there's no different pastimes in three different ages when they take birth. Hiranyaksha, Hiranyakashipu, Ravana, Kumbhakarna, Shishupal, Dantavakra. In all these three births, they are killed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Right? In one sense, yes, they created a lot of havoc. See that, okay, they were associates of the Supreme Lord, that they were some of the servants, they were doorkeepers of the Supreme Lord. And why in many temples we have Jai Vijaya at the entrance. Right? Even in my temple of Vedic Planetarium, there's Jai Vijaya at the entrance. Right? Because yeah, they are glorified. Though they wanted to return back to the service. They were given okay, either you take 3 births as demons or 7 births as devotees. They decided, okay, demons, so that they can resume their service. Is that all right?
Yeah, Prabhu. I had a second question, but if someone else has, okay, Ashlesh Prabhu, you can go.
Yes. Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dadavat Pranam, sorry
No problem,
for
no problem.
interruption. Dadavat Pranam to everyone, humble obeisances to everyone. So one thing Prabhu, so there the 4 Kumara, the Nitya Siddha or Nitya Baddha Jeep earlier, they become like the Dhruva Maharaj did the great tapasya and become really liberated. So 4 Kumara was Nitya Siddha or Nitya Baddha?
Well, in this particular pastime, we see that they are, well, first of all, they are elevated, right? To begin with, they are elevated. So they are not, when they were born as sons of Lord Brahma, from the beginning of their childhood, they were elevated. To remain celibate from the childhood, they are elevated. And we see that they are, though as impersonalists, they are performing austerities throughout the lifetime. They are not contaminated by any material contamination. Right? So those who are not contaminated by any material contamination ultimately qualify. Ultimately qualify to go even beyond this material realm. And that's why we see them also being instructed. So, from material angle, when we talk about impersonalists, we think about the Mayavadis or something. But here they're just not ordinary. That's why when we say they're not ordinary in Namas. Just like Sukdev Goswami, he's not an ordinary devotee. Though initially he's also mentioned the Romans to glorify devotional service. That okay, he was also initially practicing impersonalism. He is the eternal associate of the Supreme Lord. Was a parrot. Sukadev Goswami, Sukha, parrot. of Srimati Radharani. So that way is the eternal associate of the Supreme Lord. So similarly, the four Kumaras will also be considered in that sense. They may take form of an impersonal form, or an impersonal, not impersonal form, but as the role of impersonalist. But completely situated from their childhood for practicing, even as impersonalists, they are practicing from the very childhood, fully freed from all material contamination. That will answer your question?
Yes, Prabhu. Yes, got. Yes, very nicely you described, Prabhu. But just a quick point, I'm pointing out this. This is Sukhadev Goswami, always the associate of the Radharani, the parrot. So he's the Nitya Siddha always. But in case of the four Kumara, we did not see any evidence that they are the Nitya Siddha or Nitya Baddha earlier.
Yeah, they're hating the Kumar Sampradaya. Right? One of the Vaishnava Sampradaya, Kumar Sampradaya. Right? They are the head of the Kumar Sampradaya, who introduced the worship of Radha Krishna. Right?
Yes.
Kumar Sampradaya introduced the worship of Radha Krishna. So,
Yes.
okay.
Nice description, Prabhu. Dandavat, Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhu.
So we will stop here. It's 7:03. Thank you very much. I'd like to wish you all a safe and Krishna conscious day ahead. And we'd like to offer our prayers to the Supreme Lord by chanting 3 times. Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Hare
Krishna,
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 Krishna
Hare
Krishna, Hare
Hare
Hare,
Rama, Hare Rama, Rama
Rama
Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Shri Narsingho, Jai Narsingho, Jai Jai Narsingho. Praladesha, Jaya Padma Padmabringa. Ugra Veera Mahavishnu Bhagatam Sarvatomukam. Narsingha Bhisham Bhadra Mithya Mrityum Namamiham. Narsingh Bhagwan ki Jai. Prahlad Maharaj ki
Jai.
Let's offer our humble obeisances to all the assembled Vaishnavas. Vancha Kalpata Sindhu Bhayavascha Patitanam Pavanabhayo Vaishnavebhyo Namaha. Vaishnavindra ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Gaur Premanande.
Hari 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 Hari. Thank you everybody. Hari Bol. Hare Krishna.